Hello, how are you today? I want to talk to you a little bit today about chords and chord progressions and how we can use them in almost any kind of music we encounter. Primarily, we find these used in, or chord notation, I should say, in situations where we would play with a band, like a worship team or a garage band, or the musicians you see on stage that work together with drummers, guitars, keyboards, things like that. So I just want to talk through some of the basics of some of the terminology that you'll need to be able to identify clearly what it is we're talking about. And then we'll work on, in the next video, on how to actually build chords and understand and read those chord notations. Some of the terms you'll need first is to know what a chord progression is. A chord progression is actually a very simple definition. It's a chord, which is a group of 3 or more notes. And then the word progression means that we move forward from one to the next. So simply said, it's a series of chords. Chord progressions should always start on tonic or 1. So if you're in the key of C, your first chord should be C, and you should always end on that same key. So if you're in the key of C, then you're going to end on a C chord. Now, on occasion, a musician will change that. Most musicians learn the rules of theory and then later go on to break them. But generally speaking, you should always start and end on Do or 1. The same is true for minor. If you're in a minor chord, you're going to start with your tonic chord, or the first chord in your progression should be 1 or Do, and then you'll end again on that same chord. So if you're in E minor, you're going to start on E minor chord and you'd end on an E minor chord. If you don't end on 1, it sounds a bit unfinished, and our ears seek resolution. They want it to come back to a resting place, and if it doesn't, it feels unfinished. A few times I've encountered music where the composer chose to not end on 1 and it actually worked really well. But generally speaking, they're going to come back to home base. The other term we need to know, or another thing we need to know, are the different types of chords. There are major chords which sound happy. That's the most common. Then there's minor chords which sound sad. Those two are used in almost every song. Then you do, on an occasion, find an augmented chord and a diminished chord. Both of those are different sounding. When I refer to major as sounding happy and minor as sad, that's the overall quality or the feeling you get when you listen to that chord. Augmented is the biggest of all the chords, and it feels almost like stressed out. And then diminished, which is the smallest of all the chords, has a real depressed feel. It definitely sounds abnormal to our ears. Major and minor are what we are most comfortable with, and that's what's in 90% of the music you're going to listen to. And maybe 95? I don't know. I'm throwing out percentages, but I think you understand what I mean. Also, we have to understand what a lead sheet is. Let me get an example here. A lead sheet would be a sheet where there's the melody written out, and then the chord symbols are just written right above it. This is meant so that you play the melody with your right hand, and then your left hand would actually just play the chord. In this example, we have a G chord, and so my right hand would play what I see notated on the page, and then my left hand would just play the chord, and it would change as I come to that place in the music. Notice here I change in the measure. It's not just at the beginning of the measure. Here, I use this G chord for 2 full measures, and then I change to E minor when I cross over the bar line. On occasion, you'll see just actual lyrics written out, no word or no printed music at all. It's just the words of the song and the chord written above it. And in that case, as a musician, you either have to learn to play the melody by ear, or you will have to just play chords and sing the melody, or maybe somebody else will be providing the melody. If you're in a band setting, you might just be providing background harmony, and in that case, you wouldn't have to worry about the melody at all. Somebody else may take that responsibility for that particular song. So we've got the concept of a chord progression, which is literally just the chords in the order of the song. As we looked at this example right here, G was the first chord. Then I progress or move to E minor. And then I go to C chord and then D chord. So that is my chord progression, or the order of chords for the first line. Notice I end on G, I start on G. That means I started and ended in tonic or do, which is the key I'm in. That means my melody also is going to come from the G scale. So everything about this song is in G. And then of course we had our types of chords, which were major and minor, the most common, but then also augmented and diminished. And again, in the next video, I'll show you how to build those chords.